If there is one Pokemon series that actually feels like it was meant for an older audience, a series that didn't just cater towards 10-year-olds on summer vacation, most people would probably say that series goes to XY, where we also saw plenty of signs of maturity for a kid's anime. But I actually think Diamond and Pearl had even more qualities that made it feel like for the first time ever, the Pokemon show wanted to take itself serious. And unlike XY or Sun and Moon, Diamond and Pearl seems like it's the only show that the entire Pokemon community can collectively agree on it was good. Not only did this show peak in storytelling, character arcs, pacing, and of course Pokemon battling, I feel it also excelled in something that we could far overlook. This aspect is realism, a trait that is rarely, if ever, present in any of the other Pokemon series. But what do I mean by realism? The answer starts in the first episode with our brand new protagonist Dawn. Unlike Misty or May, Dawn was the first official companion who is also a protagonist alongside Ash. And this episode sets that role up perfectly by showing us the beginning of her adventure out into the Pokemon world with the dream of becoming a top contest coordinator. If that sounds familiar, it is, because May's dream was the same, however Dawn's character, like previously mentioned, is now a main protagonist. So her presence in the show felt a lot more constant, and with Diamond and Pearl's 200+ episodes, you can see why I and many others love this companion because the screen time was there. Not only that, but her contests were fun to watch alongside Ash's gym battles, as it was a milestone for her growth. But the friendship she developed alongside Ash and the returning best man Brock made this group a powerhouse for this series. And honestly, this is in large part what made the series amazing to watch. However, this still doesn't answer the question of this anime's maturity. The real reason I think Diamond and Pearl was a cut above the rest was for the characters. And again, while the series had a ton of pros, which we'll get to, the main thing that needs to be focused on is how every single character in the show was peak Pokemon writing. The companions were amazing, the rivals literally unbeatable, the villains were threatening, even the Pokemon had good distinguished personalities. But what I found that we don't get much anymore in modern Pokemon is realistic back and forth dialogue. Like, the dialogue between characters in the series felt way more grounded and connected than it ever has. It felt like the characters were actually existing in the same world together instead of in their own world like how Journeys felt. A perfect example of this is after Ash fought the Snow Point City gym leader, Paul shows up to battle, bumping into Ash, where we see Paul act his usual shrewd self, and Zoe, Dawn's contest rival who's never met him, was stunned seeing how Paul treats his rival. Later, Zoe confronts Paul after disrespecting Ash's Pokemon, getting frustrated at his lack of empathy, and Ash and Dawn are just like, yeah, don't worry about him, that's just how he is. But like, that little conversation with characters outside of our companions is what makes this show feel reactive. Like how anyone would act if they saw their friend being blatantly disrespected and didn't know the context. Take another example of how Paul from time to time will stand by and watch Ash throughout his adventure. Even when Ash performs in Dawn's contests, Paul will see it live on TV and his reaction is just priceless.
What does he think he's doing?
I just love the way Paul acts here. These moments are a gem to behold. The best example would be during the league when Paul, Barry, Conway, and Ash are all talking and looking up each other's battle histories, like how anyone prepping for a competitive battle with a pre-selected opponent would do, as that's part of the sport. But how is this the only time we ever get to see Ash or anyone else prep ahead of time before they jump into a battle with somebody at the league? I think Sawyer was the only other kid who took notes of Ash's battling style before fighting him in the Colossus League. But whatever happened to these computers with the stats of the opponents? This is so cool. Yeah, we rarely ever get to see these reactive character moments that make them just feel real, as oftentimes Pokemon doesn't show these scenes that would better establish our characters. Like, why in Journeys did Pokemon take 80 episodes to finally have someone mention Ash was the champion of the Alola region? You would think Ash would get noticed pretty often, as a champion of a region is like world famous level, and I feel like when the writers finally mentioned it in Journeys, it was only because people were complaining about it. I'm telling you, these little details go a long way in making the series feel real and connected. It breaks the immersion when nobody speaks like a regular person would speak unless it's meant to be one of those shows. But clearly Diamond and Pearl got this right, having the characters not just know each other, but study them, analyze their behavior, so when they battle, they have an actual plan, something we should have 100% seen moving forward. Speaking of battling, one of my favorite things while watching the show was how many battles we got to see. I would argue this was the most amount of battles we've ever seen in a Pokemon series, and boy does it add a lot to the viewing experience, especially when you combine it with fillers. Like, yeah, every series has fillers. One of Diamond and Pearl's biggest flaws, if not the biggest flaw, is the amount of fillers they have, but with all the battles they give us, plus Dawn's contest, which is also part battling, means that this actually feels like we have less fillers. This also in large part made this Sinnoh pacing extremely good, like you won't go too long without getting bored as you would in Johto or Journeys. So not only were we getting a ton of battles, they were also amazing to watch, not really for their animation as they definitely improved in later series, but in how Ash and everyone battled. I really think for once the anime started to act more like the games, where strategy and type matchups actually matter. And this didn't just apply to the rivals, even Ash cared about type matchups and having a pre-planned strategy every now and then. You can see this clearly in the league. Another amazing decision Diamond and Pearl made was allowing Ash to use his past Pokemon to battle in this league. Granted, he didn't really pick his most powerful Pokemon, at least we got to see his Sceptile, Donphan, and Shiny Noctowl return. But before we talk about the league any further, we need to bring up my favorite thing in this series, other than the dialogue. This is of course the rivals. If you've watched the series, you already know there were tons, and I mean tons of them. Starting with Dawn's contest rivals, we have Nando, Zoe, Kenny, Jessalina, and Ursula. Nando was both a rival to Dawn and Ash, battling in contests alongside gyms, which was the first to see in Pokemon. Zoe was probably Dawn's greatest rival and the most chill. She honestly had more of a friendship with Dawn than a rivalry, that is until they faced off against each other. However, Zoe was a W, always helping out her group like mentioned earlier, standing up to Paul when he disrespected Ash. The next one is Kenny, Dawn's friend back when they were young, and he was okay. He basically had a crush on Dawn, but he was put in the friend zone pretty fast because he was just kind of strange. Jessalina is just the greatest Dawn rival by far. And finally, we have Ursula, who's basically here to piss off Dawn for the later half of the series. For Brock, he has all the girls that rejected him, and Team Galactic, specifically the dude with the Toxicroak that had beef with his Krogunk. Yeah, Brock never really gets main rivals, as he's treated more like a side character who stands by and helps out the group. Finally, Ash, with the largest amount of rivals he's ever had, that being Nando, Barry, Conway, and of course, Paul. All of which are on the list of Ash's best rivals, especially everyone's favorite Paul. Beginning with Nando, who again was here to help challenge Ash, showing up at random times throughout his journey and also in the Sinnoh League. Ash's next rival is Barry, who he met a little later into Diamond and Pearl, and although I would have preferred he came earlier in the series, I do think his introduction was great, as having another character race for gym battles is always going to be good. And Barry is just a very entertaining character. The relationship is super competitive and they both have a rivalry with Paul, except Barry is a super fan of him while Ash couldn't be further from him. His second to last rival is Conway, who is super analytical and also very competitive like the rest, but he's kinda weird, and that's what makes him special. Every time Conway's on screen, I just start laughing, like this guy makes every scene strange, but in the funniest way possible. Underrated Ash rival for sure. Now, the best rival, hands down, and the first one he met in episode 3 is of course, Paul. This dude literally made Sinnoh an S-tier series.
Welcome to the Temple for Rock Pokemon, the Oreburgh Gym.
You mean this gym is for rock Pokemon?
Duh. Paul in large part is what makes Sinnoh a more mature anime, as his battle philosophy is exactly the same as the game's character, only catching Pokemon with the best stats. His personality is also drastically different from most of the other rivals, not respecting weak trainers or Pokemon. He really only cares about winning battles and making sure his Pokemon are the strongest they can be. Paul is Ash's only rival that challenges his entire battle strategy and makes Ash question if loving Pokemon and pushing forward with willpower is enough. Or should he just be like Paul, who only judges Pokemon for how powerful they are in battle? You see, this clash of ideologies is what sparks this huge rivalry between them for the entire series, where both are constantly watching over each other to see how their journey is going and testing out each other's strengths and weaknesses. Paul's over-the-top, rude attitude makes these moments super fun to watch. Even if you don't like Paul, the fact we finally have someone that makes Ash this pissed off and motivated is what brings in an amazing character growth arc for Ash. But what really amplifies the relationship is Chimchar, a Pokemon Paul caught early on to his journey since he witnessed it take out a large group of wild Zangoose with its supercharged flame wheel. We come to find this is Chimchar's Blaze ability, an ability that when Chimchar's health gets low, his fire-type moves get a huge power boost. While Paul repeatedly tried to get this kind of power he originally had when he was fighting the Zangoose, he failed to achieve it. During a double battle, Paul and Ash were teamed up with each other, a genius move from the writers, and as Paul used Chimchar for the match, he still still couldn't get Blaze to activate. So after the match, Paul went to train Chimchar by attacking him to force Blaze to happen, but Chimchar ended up almost dying as a result. This led to Ash stepping in and taking him to the Pokemon Center, where Brock questioned why Paul was doing this. Paul explains the backstory of the Zangoose and Chimchar's hidden power and why he does this intense training with just Chimchar. Nurse Joy chimes in, telling Paul he can't use Chimchar in the tournament as he needs more time to heal. However, Paul could care less, as he sends out injured Chimchar along with Ash's Turtwig up against a scary Metagross and Zangoose. This battle was a disaster for Chimchar, and he still couldn't get Blaze to activate, so Paul gives up commanding him halfway into the battle, leaving Ash to take over both Chimchar and Turtwig. Ash does win the battle, but Paul is done with Chimchar and releases him back into the wild, saying he's useless and pathetic. This is where we see Ash make one of the best decisions he's ever made, to take Chimchar in for his team. Not only is this great storytelling, but it makes Ash and Paul's relationship personal outside of only battling, as Ash now works on bringing out Chimchar's full strengths. Later down the line, Paul's older brother coordinates a full 6-on-6 battle between him and Ash to cheer up Paul after his devastating loss to Brandon, a trainer Ash beat the series prior. Paul usually doesn't fight Ash, but because he knows Ash was able to beat Brandon, the man he couldn't defeat himself, he accepts the challenge right away. This battle was one of the best battles in Pokemon, as while the stakes aren't as high as the league, the weight of whoever wins this battle proves not only the stronger opponent, but their training methods are on the line as well. Since up to this point, Ash and Paul were pretty similar on power levels, however Paul came in with a well thought out strategy to defeat Ash. The whole battle, Paul was predicting exactly what Ash would do, and what Pokemon perfectly counters his Pokemon. Because of this, Ash gets down to his last Pokemon, Chimchar, and since he's up against his former trainer, Chimchar is a lot more motivated to win. This leads to him evolving during the battle, taking down Paul's broken Ursaring. Yet Paul still had plenty more Pokemon, and Monferno, while putting in some good work, does go down, leaving Ash with a devastating loss, making him really question if Paul's methods were right after all. But if you know Ash, you know he doesn't give up. As later down the line, when Monferno evolves into Infernape, finally mastering Blaze, when Ash and Paul face off in the league, not only was this battle hands down one of Ash's greatest battles, but Infernape also managed to get his revenge on Paul by taking down half his team and his ace Electivire. What's even greater is that the team Ash used to defeat Paul was the exact team he used at Lake Acuity. Paul even knew this and still lost, and finally for once it felt like after the battle, Paul not only respected Ash as a trainer, but saw that trusting your Pokemon and not just their raw strength can actually lead to success. Which is why we love this rivalry. It's more than just him being rude. We actually got to see Ash grow as a character along with the other characters. Heck, even Brock got some character development in Sinnoh by becoming a Pokemon doctor. Granted, I don't think it lasted long, but hey, that's more than plenty for Brock. The other huge thing that made Diamond and Pearl serious was the villains, as they were no joke. Hunter J was literally kidnapping people's Pokemon and selling them on the black market. She's like the evil bounty hunter constantly facing off with our companions. One of my favorite arcs being the time Hunter J went after a super strong Riolu. This is also when Ash got to use his aura powers outside of the Lucario movie to help locate Riolu and save him. It was just really cool seeing Ash bond with another cool Pokemon. I wish he would have caught this Riolu, as they seemed like a great fit, but Ash already had a good storyline going with Infernape, so I guess that's why. But yeah, Hunter J was ruthless for the entire series. She even teamed up with Team Galactic when they went after the Lake Trio. However, Uxie and Mesprit kinda ended her career by launching Future Sight at Hunter J, landing on her ship, and somehow Pokemon casually showed these characters brutally getting murdered in a kids show. A few episodes later, Team Galactic, who was on the verge of destroying the entire world, had the leader basically self-destruct himself on camera by jumping into a portal into time and space where he's never seen again. Pokemon was not holding back on the villains in this series. They really wanted to show off a more mature side of the anime that we rarely get to see in Pokemon. It was great though. The only thing I can recall not liking other than the fillers is Dawn's Ambipom, who was originally Ash's Apom, leaving Dawn to go play ping pong randomly. It's a lot of pongs. That, and I guess Hackerman 9000 showing up right at the end of the league to intercept Ash's possible victory. Like seriously Pokemon, you just had to make a character with a Darkrai KOing everyone, then when Ash finally defeats it, he sends in another legendary, Latios. Like, come on, what even is this? Overall, Diamond and Pearl felt honestly to me to be the most complete Pokemon series ever made, along with it being arguably the most mature series as well. It had rivals that actually acted like games characters with strategy, had amazing companions, Dawn being Ash's closest friend to date alongside Brock, villains doing what villains should do, which is be threatening, the battles were some of the best, if not the best in the entire show, all the side arcs with the Pokemon Rangers, Hunter J, Dawn's contest, Team Galactic, the tag battle tournament, Paul's midlife crisis with Brandon, and the Lake Acuity battle. You have 200 episodes with somehow good pacing, and the best of them all, the Battle Dimension theme song.
On the road, far from home, but you don't have to feel alone. Brave and strong, together we will be. It's our destiny.
Is Diamond and Pearl a perfect series? No, but it's pretty close to being one. With that being said, I recommend you watch the time I covered the other mature anime, Pokemon XY. Click on the screen to see that video, and I'll see you guys over there. Bye bye!